I mean, as some of you probably know, it's been our intention for quite a long time to do a tribute worthy of Patrick Gowers, and we have been working on that tribute for the podcast behind the scenes. Taken a little while longer than we hoped. I think we started it 3 years ago.
Yeah. But it's going to be good.
It's going to be something you won't be expecting when it comes out. We've talked to a lot of people, and there's just so many stories to tell around Patrick. But tonight, we're lucky enough to be joined by the family of Patrick Gowers and another special guest. So let's just bring him in. Help me welcome Carolyn Gowers, Patrick's wife, Katharine, Rebecca, and Sir Timothy, and John Yap, who produced the score. Have a seat anywhere you like. Have a seat. Okay. Thank you all for being here, first of all. Thank you so much.
Very special for us.
Yes. Most Sherlockians in this room, I mean, even when they read the stories, the music they now hear in their heads is Patrick Gowers' score, which, I guess the question I'd like to ask is being inextricably linked at this point to the great detective, how do you think Patrick would feel about that?
On this day?
Well, no, I just mean in general. I mean, I feel like there's generations of people who now can't pick up a Conan Doyle book without hearing his music. I mean...
Well, he'd be very pleased. Sorry. He'd be very pleased.
Yeah, okay.
Perhaps people don't know that he had a terrible stroke in 2001 and he ended his final days at a nursing home. And the Sherlock Holmes series used to be shown, and probably still is, on ITV4. Mm-hmm. And it was shown at about 12 o'clock before lunch. I was often with him, and he used to always watch it. I think he got a lot of pleasure out of the feeling that it went on and that people were still wanting to see it, definitely.
That's wonderful. Well, and television is a stressful business, and Patrick had a lot on his shoulders with this show when he was being created. What was the stress level like in the Gowers household, from 1984 to 1994? I guess, how was Patrick with the deadlines? Let me ask you that question.
Bad. And it's probably worth saying that in those days, we didn't have computers, and he had to write the music out. Every single note was written by hand into a score, and the scores had to go to a copyist who then copied each individual part, and those then had to be duplicated for the orchestra. And sometimes there would be a session, let's say on a Wednesday, and he would be continuing to finish the score for the session on Wednesday. He would still be writing music at midnight on Tuesday, and I would be driving the score when he finished it to the copyist across London. And it was a nightmare, actually. Yeah. Stress level used to get very high.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you if you ever found a method for dealing with the deadlines, or if it was just always an ongoing, challenge.
I don't think he needed a method, because I think that was his method.
Okay, well, there you go.
He used to sort of calculate how many minutes he would have to write a day.
Yeah.
And I think if the number of minutes was a reasonably achievable amount, then something kicked off in his brain that meant he can't have had the right idea. And so he'd sort of wait until it became almost impossible, and only then would he start writing often.
Rebecca, you had the distinction of having a very special room in the house growing up. So we've spoken to them before. That's how we know some of these things.
Weird sentence otherwise.
Tell us about that experience, if you recall.
You should be on.
Okay. I think what I mentioned to you is that, at that time, Mum and Dad, we lived in a tall, thin house, and my bedroom was the floor below my father and above where Mum was teaching the piano. And Dad used to waste an extraordinary amount of time improvising jazz. So I would know what he was doing from the sounds he was making. So we would all know he had to write however many minutes a day, as Timothy was saying. And then I'd hear him just start drifting into jazz. So everybody's panic. Other people's parents working, you don't know exactly what they're doing in the minute. But with him, you could hear all of it, whether he was working or not. And also getting the piano lessons coming up. So I was in a sonic sandwich, really.
Yeah. So was the jazz just like an outlet then to step away from Sherlock?
Yeah. He'd been a jazz musician all the way through his life. But he just loved to.
After we talked, when we did the interview, it occurred to me: was there ever any synchronization or syncopation between the upstairs and the downstairs piano?
I don't think there was. What I, as a child, what I got was knowing what mood my parents were in. Because if the pupils were playing badly, I'd know that was no fun for my mum. And if Dad was improvising, he wasn't working, panic levels going up. That was it.
But was he very private about the process in terms of, when he was writing, would he solicit feedback? Would he? What was that like?
Yeah. The answer to that is absolutely he would. Yeah.
I think he certainly talked to me. Meals were. Yes, he liked to talk about what he was doing, but it was painful because he agonised over minute details. I mean, I think that's why the music's so wonderful, actually, because he just would not let it go if it wasn't quite right, and that's why he was always, as Timothy said, he sort of used the time he had, and I can remember saying to him, "But no one's going to notice." If it's G sharp or G natural in that particular chord, can't you just move on? And he'd say, "I don't care, I'll notice." And he really, it's really quality stuff, I think.
Another thing which I probably mentioned to you before that he would do. So you picture him at an upright piano in the room where he worked at the top of the house, and then he had one of these giant televisions, obviously, next to him with the video with the rough cut on, and he would play the piano alongside the scene and sit you down on his really falling apart sofa and say, "Does that work?" or "What does that make you feel?" and so on. His greatest triumph, which is quite strange in a father, but not in this context, was if he could get you to cry. Then that was top music. If it brought a tear to your eye.
Were there any big moments that you remember where you changed his mind on something, or he altered something based on your feedback?
I can't honestly say that I can remember that. But he certainly tested the waters with us, and presumably he was using our feedback. Otherwise, why would he have asked? Yeah. But I don't remember. Yeah.
Well, and Timothy, you obviously went in a different path into mathematics, but also you're a fan of jazz as well, yeah?
Entirely thanks to him. Yes.
Yeah. What were some of his favorite jazz musicians, and do you like the same ones?
Yes, so his favourite pianist was Oscar Peterson, and another of his very favourite mathematicians was a West Coast jazz arranger called Marty Paich, who was extremely influential. So it's not completely obvious because my father's music is not jazz, but it's very, very jazz-infused.
Right.
And a lot of his inspiration for harmony and texture and things came from Marty Paich. He used to talk about him a lot, and in fact went out to meet him. And it became clear when he talked to Marty Paich that he sort of understood Marty Paich's music better than Marty Paich did himself.
Were there any guilty pleasures musically? Guilty pleasures that he had? Beach Boys?
Oh, no, nothing like that. Jazz is as guilty as it gets.
I once, as a teenager, played him some tracks by the Police, which are, and he said, after some thought, he said, "Well, the drummer knows what he's doing."
That's great.
Well, the drummer is very mathematical in the Police, and it goes over my head, and I go, okay, I accept that it's good.
There's a story you guys shared with us, and I would love to share it here, about something Patrick did during his time in the military. I don't know who to hand that off to, but I'd love to share that story here.
I think we were saying that he did national service in the Navy.
Yeah.
This just tells you that his mind had other capacities. So he invented a machine that would throw out I guess a sonic shadow of a submarine that wasn't there to fox the enemy, and handed over the blueprints to his senior officer. And nothing happened. So eventually he said, what happened to my invention? And the guy said, well, it's an official secret now, and you're too low ranking to know. So he never found out. But he was very mathematically adept in all sorts of,
So Katharine, obviously you were involved in the show, as everyone here knows. So, but perhaps, I don't know, to many of us, one of the most fascinating things is that you are the violin sounds of Jeremy Brett's playing. I don't know if I said that very clearly, but anytime you see Jeremy playing in the show, it's Katharine on the violin. And tell us a little bit how that came about.
Well, it came about, obviously nepotism features, but actually it's almost at the origin anti-nepotism, because Dad, obviously when he was recording, he employed wonderful session musicians. They're not just session musicians, they're quartets and people who are great musicians. And because Sherlock Holmes was an amateur violinist, Dad thought, we'll have some violin in here. But also, Dad, as Mum has been explaining, was an extreme perfectionist. So he asked one of the professionals, could you please play the violin like an amateur? And so this violinist played the violin like an amateur. And Dad thought, you don't sound like an amateur, you sound like a professional trying to sound like an amateur. And then he thought, who do I know who sounds like an amateur? And he thought, yeah, my 13-year-old daughter sounds like an amateur. So that's how I got involved.
And your first episode was?
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research in anticipation of this, because I thought I've just got to jog my memory a little bit, because it's such a long time ago. And the first episode of Scandal in Bohemia, you see Jeremy take a violin, and I'm playing for him. So I appear in the first episode. Oh, I don't appear, sorry. My sound. It would be very odd if I had appeared.
Did it get harder in later years as you advanced as a player?
Well, there's a story, you see. Because you have to realise that my involvement was over 11 years, and that is 11 years of quite a lot of violin practice. Mm-hmm. And there's a trajectory through the episodes, and so there's a particular episode which is called The Resident Patient, which for me was a very humiliating experience, because Dad knew that Sherlock was very ambitious, and he thought he'd play the last movement of the Beethoven violin concerto on a whim. And he knew that Sherlock also wouldn't play that just the violin line. He'd have to have the orchestral accompaniment, but there was no orchestra at 221B, so he was going to provide his own orchestra. So it meant that Sherlock was playing not only this very tricky violin line, but also accompanying harmony. And so I had to do that. And it's really not good. But it was exactly what Dad wanted. And then a year later, in 1986, the Six Napoleons, that I think is the first time he integrated me into the actual incidental music. And I heard that again. And I remember it was a bit of a sort of big thing between us, because there I was playing with an orchestra. And actually, with my ears now, I don't think that's very good either. I thought it was, it's not. But then, in The Devil's Foot, Dad reversed a situation And because Sherlock Holmes is having these trippy, he has to take a drug, and you see all these spliced things of hallucinatory things and sounds. And Dad decided that for the end titles, he was going to have something that was based on this hallucinatory stuff. And he decided to compose something that was actually physically impossible on the violin. And this meant that he and I took a trip to Camden Town together to visit a man called David Vorhaus, who had a sampling machine. And I had to be sampled more or less note by note and then sewn back together to produce this thing that's impossible. And I said to Dad, look, you can do this, but nobody must know it's me, because it's not really me, you know, that you've sampled me, and nobody can actually play this because it's not physically possible. And I listened to that again, and actually he does something really clever, which is to interweave the virtuosic stuff that's unplayable with stuff that is playable that I must have been playing. So actually, if you didn't know, it really does sound like somebody's playing something, and you wouldn't know that it was unplayable. But I remember when the episode was aired, when it finished, the telephone rang immediately. And I was with Dad in the room, and I just saw him pick up the phone, hear whatever the person said, and said, "It's Kathy." And then he put the phone down and said it was some musician who just said, "Who's the violinist?" Because this. So I don't think my reputation as a formidable virtuoso stuck. But yes, to answer your original question, then by the end, there are ones where I'm playing much, much more, and he actually wrote, I think, for me to play, because I could be the interpreter as close to, I think, what he was wanting. And also he knew that I would look at the parts in advance and practice, and we could talk about them, which the session players just look at them on the day and play. So there was a kind of investment.
Do you remember which ones those are, which episodes?
Well, just a brief look. The Red Circle is one. The Eligible Bachelor, I noticed. And I'm playing the opening titles on those. I only played the opening titles very few times, but I can recognise it because it's a lot more legato than most people do it. And also there's a trill that I tend to do from the upper note, if you really want to get very specific.
This is the forum. This is the place to talk about it.
Yeah. I didn't realise until a friend pointed out. She said, "I always know it's you because you trill from the upper note." I said, "Really? Aren't you supposed to?" But yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, just to follow up on that, I mean, knowing how much he cared about the series and how critical he was of the music and how he wanted it to be perfect, I mean, can you now appreciate that he was having you do these parts because he wanted you in it? I appreciate that for his own artistic reasons, that was what he wanted, and he could have it. I think for my pride, it certainly was a struggle when I realised things were going out that just weren't very good. And most people who are learning a skill don't go into the public domain when they're not sort of ready. But now, absolutely, I can look back and I think it was a really amazing thing, especially later, to have your father write pieces for you to play. Is, you know, how many people get that opportunity. So I feel sort of moved, actually, that was possible. Yeah.
Mm. Let's talk about the theme for a moment, because the theme for the show is so memorable, so special. We all know it. We could break into song right now, but we won't. Did theme tunes come easily to Patrick? Or did he? Do you remember if there was?
Pulling faces.
I'm remembering a thing that never actually happened. You probably don't even know this, but he had a connection with Michael Powell, a very famous film director, and he did do one score for him actually, but they were going to do a musical, and the producer kept telling Patrick he had to write something that would catch on. And it kept on saying it should be like the Lara theme, and I just remember Patrick sort of groaning. And I think he did find it difficult in a way. Yes, I mean he knew he was writing; it had to be catchy. It's not easy, is it? I mean, I think he sort of would have liked to have written something that everybody. If you think of something like the Deer Hunter theme, which was Cavatina. And we knew all the people involved in that, and it absolutely just went like that. Everybody knew it, and everybody probably still knows it. He'd have liked to have done, yes. I don't think it's easy.
No, it's not easy, but I think he did achieve it with Sherlock. I mean,
Well, in a way, but it's not...
Not exactly the same.
No.
Yeah. Did you guys, I mean, were you watching the show as they aired? And, I mean, what was that like, having gone through the process with him from the ground up and to see the finished product? I mean, what was that like?
In a strange, it just was normal.
Yeah.
Because that's what
Yeah.
that happened. You don't know any different, so...
Yeah, right.
And it wasn't just the Sherlocks. I mean, because he wrote all sorts of other things as well.
Yeah.
I think the thing that you might not realise is that because it was done in blocks, he never knew whether he was going to be asked to do the music for the next one. So there was a lot of tension there, I can assure you. Waiting. Do you think they'll ask me again? Will I do them? I mean, it was quite remarkable that he was always asked again to do it, and I don't know how that happened exactly, but thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Tim, did you have?
I was just going to say two things. One is that this experience has left us all, I think, with a rather sort of acute sensitivity to music in any film we watch. I suppose, in a way, I mean, he was always saying sometimes the most successful thing you can do as a film composer is write music that people aren't aware of. It changes their perception of the program, but they're not consciously aware of the music. But that certainly doesn't apply to us. I think everything we watch, we're consciously aware. And the other thing I was going to say was, with Sherlock, obviously once he'd written the theme, he was then able to use it for several series. So it was a sort of one-off investment. And I'm sure many people have noticed that the theme doesn't just occur at the beginning, but it occurs in all sorts of places, in disguise, and a bass part here, and other things like that. And so one of the things that I enjoy when watching it is just spot the theme.
Right.
So I'm just going to say another thing you can look for with Dad's music is that he used to talk about writing with a scene and writing against it, and he was generally bored by composers who just emphasized what was already happening. So if there's a scary scene, you have scary music. And he really loved to write against. So if you have a scary scene, say, he's going to write something incredibly agonizing, which is leading you forward to the sort of terrible thing that's happening next. But a lot of his music is writing against, you'll find, if you bear that category in mind.
Yeah. But to Tim's point, I mean, the way he would modulate the theme, the other shows, I mean, even today, but a lot of shows from that time, themes would get reused, and they got old quickly. Did he relish this idea of, like, this is Sherlock Holmes, this is going to be a challenge, and I could possibly make the one that demolishes every other Sherlock Holmes out there? Was that ever a thought?
I don't think he thought about the other Sherlocks at all. I don't remember him ever... In fact, I have personally no idea what the themes are for the other Sherlocks.
They're not memorable.
I think he was much more concerned with what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah. So, John, let's talk about the score for a minute, the official commercial release, because it frankly has kind of become the go-to collectible item for all the fans, because frankly it's one of the only things that was actually released commercially for the show. So I'm guessing we all have it. I mean, I'm just assuming, yeah, lots of nodding heads. But whose idea was it to create the album? How did that come about?
Well, my involvement with the whole thing came when Granada TV, which I recorded and released an album of their previous program called Lost Empires, and so they got in touch with me and said, look, we are doing this new series of Sherlock Holmes, and we think that the music is lovely. And I told them, okay, send me some samples of the music. So they sent me a videotape of little episodes that they've completed. And I watched the episodes. And then I realized that there was some beautiful music within the episodes that were sent to me. But the problem is that as with all soundtrack music, is that they are like little snippets. Some of them are like 20 seconds long, and some of them are like 45 seconds and a minute. They don't exist in complete tracks as a piece within their own rights. But I did realize that there were some beautiful themes and beautiful music in it. So I got in touch with Granada and said, look, we need to think about it in a different way. And they put me in touch with Patrick. And I met with Patrick, and I told Patrick that we should do an album, but he will have to create pieces to stand on their own from the themes that he's written for the television series. I think that was music to his ears, I think, because that's exactly what he would love to do. So that was, I thought it was going to be, oh, no. But he embraced the idea straight away. And so I left it completely to him as to what he wants to do with it. He was very excited about the whole thing. Then I said to him, of course, this wouldn't be a soundtrack album. This will be a film score, a score from the series. And so we have to think in terms of recording it differently. We decided to record it like as a classical album. Luckily, I have a record company, and I've been doing a lot of Broadway West End musicals and major things. So I got lots of contacts within the industry. I was very friendly with the managing director of the Wren Orchestra of London. The Wren Orchestra used to be, I think, was started by Capital Radio. And I said to him, can we use your orchestra to record this new album? And he said, sure, absolutely. So we got the symphony orchestra. And then there is a children's choir bit. And luckily I was also very friendly with the guy who ran the St. Paul's Boys Choir. And I said to him, can we use the boys' choir to record a track on this album? No, sure, no problem. And I'm sorry for the violin music. Patrick created some wonderful string quartet pieces, and obviously the solo violin playing. I was also very, very, very close with the Gabrielli string quartet. So I thought I'll ask them, and of course the leader of the string quartet is a violinist. He didn't play like an amateur.
No, he's cool.
he played amazing. As well as he could. So we had like the Gabrielli String Quartet, the Wren Symphony Orchestra, the St. Paul's Boys Choir, to create this album of the score from Sherlock Holmes. It's turned out to be a wonderful album. I don't know how many of you got it, but you should get it.
Well, yeah, and I want to talk about, because it's being reissued, but we'll come back to that, because I am curious about Patrick in the studio. I mean, when that was being recorded, we've talked about how he's a perfectionist, and all the great musicians I'm sure are. But how did that perfectionism manifest itself in the studio? I mean, would he ask for takes to get it just right, or I mean, what was it like?
He was actually very fastidious about it all, but we had a very easy time, especially as when I told him that we will be recording at Abbey Road Studios, which he was absolutely over the moon about. No, he was actually surprisingly easy, but we did do a few retakes.
Okay. Well, I know some of you guys visited Patrick during the show when he was filming in the studio, or when he was recording in the studio. This is a question I've actually been curious about for a long time. Did Patrick ever play himself on anything? Did he ever pick up an instrument and play as part of any recording for the show or on the score? Would he ever get on the piano or?
He was conducting his own.
Yeah.
He was conducted, so I don't think he would have played. He did play in some things, but they weren't his own music, I don't think.
Okay. Did he always conduct? I mean, I know sometimes.
He almost invariably did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because right at the beginning of his composing career, the first thing he ever wrote, I think, was a documentary for an oil. I think it might have been BP. I can't quite remember. It was a sort of commercial thing, and that was recorded. And the conductor for that was Marcus Dodds, and I think one or two other things that he wrote were conducted by Marcus Dodds. But
I do have one regret, when Patrick approached me about doing second volume of the music, because as he says, there's lots more wonderful music that was written. I was very involved and was very busy with my other recordings. I was doing a lot of recordings in New York, so I sort of said, yeah, perhaps, and we never did get started on the second volume. That's a great regret, I think.
I mean, in the world before social media, did he feel recognized? Did he know how much this music impacted people? Did he get to experience any of that?
A bit, because people came from America, actually. I remember somebody who I'm sure you know, actually.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten what his name is.
Josh Harvey?
Yes. Visited him in the nursing home, and, just... It was a bit like when he went to see Marty Page. He was sort of telling Patrick in detail about all sorts of things about which Patrick by this time had sort of forgotten. I think he did. People were always writing to him, and he got a lot of fan mail. And people would write to him and say, "Do you have the music? I want to. My 15-year-old daughter wants to play the Sherlock theme. Can you send us a copy of the music?" There was quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of it from America, I must say. So I think in some ways he was disappointed, though, that... I mean, it's a bit strange. He never got any sort of official recognition. He won a BAFTA for his music for some other things he did, and he was never got any recognition. I minded about that.
Yeah.
I felt it's extraordinary that music didn't get some sort of official...
Right.
Actually, I've been asked over the years, perhaps you can tell me, I think the score, the music as recorded, is it published in this form?
No.
Maybe it should be, because I have been asked by people, over the years.
Let's do that.
Do you have the music for LCO?
He wrote a Sherlock Holmes suite that was also commissioned and was performed in Cambridge. Mm-hmm. You were playing? Yeah. I'd forgotten that.
I mean, his original musical director score must exist. You must have it.
I must have it.
Because he obviously wrote it for the album.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe you should print and publish the score for the whole for the songs for the tracks, because they're wonderful. They're wonderful tracks.
Rebecca, did you want to hop in?
I just wanted to hop back to the question of recognition and say something which everybody here will know, but we haven't actually articulated yet, which was that he adapted the theme and had in every episode, and that was a sort of clues for musical detectives to unpack. It was a tribute to Sherlock, but it also totally appealed to the kind of person he was. But I think that was him sending a message out to the real musicians in his audience, whether they ever got back to him or not. He felt he was in conversation with the people, that there would be people who really, really understood what he was doing when he did that.
Well, that's kind of, I think, why we first reached out to you, because we started to brush that surface, and then we realized we're not good enough musicians.
Neither am I.
But I mean, to your point too about, you know, fans that would write him letters, we've actually heard from some people who reached out to Patrick, and you know, they like to rub in our faces that they have things that Patrick sent them that we don't have, and someone actually claims to have a roughly put together second volume of the score. But they said Patrick sent him a cassette tape with tracks from the last couple seasons of the show. So it's possible. Haven't been able to track that down yet, but we'll let you know if we do.
So just one more thing, which I'm going to say to everybody here. He used to say to me, for every one letter I ever get, I picture there's 99 people who thought, I might write to him, and then they never quite got round to it. So he would multiply the one letter by 100. So if you really love something, write to the person and tell them, because it means so much to them.
I did actually buy a violin because of this music. I play guitar, and I thought I could pick this up, but nothing transfers. I sound like an amateur.
So John, tell us. So the CD is actually being re-released and remastered, and tell us what's been going on with that.
Well, to celebrate this 40th anniversary, we've decided to what I call Digimix, which is basically a mixing by digital method, which is a miraculous situation. And the album is coming out at the end of this month. In a new Digimix version. So basically it is, as we did the original album, as the classical recording. So everything was, we concentrated on the full dynamics of the sound, from soft to loud. And so quite a lot of the tracks are done on the softer level. But for this version, I've moderated and sort of compressed the extreme dynamic sound to a more middling sound, and it sounds really lovely and louder. And if you have the original album, maybe you should invest in one.
Well, before we wrap this up, which I you know, there's so many questions we could ask you, but I feel like Patrick must have gotten to know Sherlock. He must have gotten to know Jeremy over the years. Do you guys have any recollections of Jeremy and Patrick together? Any stories you'd like to share?
I have one.
Yeah.
Just getting, in those days, we didn't have mobile phones or anything. In our house, we had two landlines. One was downstairs and one was right up at the top of this house that Rebecca mentioned. Patrick worked at the top of the house, and the phone rang, and I picked up the phone downstairs, and this deep voice said, "Jeremy here." And I said, "Oh," he said, "could I please speak to Patrick?" In a very sort of serious voice. And I said, "Well, yes, of course, I'll get him something." And I could listen in, so Patrick picked up the phone upstairs and said, "Hello," and Jeremy said, "Darling, absolutely wonderful. Just had your score for whatever the latest one was." I mean, you know, he was completely over the top and full of, but he was also, of course, I mean, he was a very good musician, Jeremy Brett. He had been a chorister and all this. And I think he really appreciated the music.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a talk out there where Jeremy tells a story about having just gotten off the phone with Patrick. And being so excited about exactly what you just said, and so I think he knew the value of what Patrick was doing. Before we go, just a quick question: do you guys happen to know what was Patrick's? Did he have a favorite episode? Did he have a favorite piece? Do you happen to know? Or a couple favorites?
I think he liked Irene Adler, where she goes to the opera. I mean, Jeremy, who goes to the opera? Somebody goes. I think he loved doing that one.
Okay.
I think that's right, because he loved it in the studio when we recorded that.
Surely the Reichenbach
Yes, I was going to
Falls
say-
has got to be the Reichenbach Falls.
music.
Oh, yes, the death of Sherlock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually went to Reichenbach Falls as a family. Kathy, didn't you play your violin? Yes, we actually went there.
That's great. Well, we've said it many times, and we'll continue, but I mean, this show would not be what it is without Patrick's music, and it's timeless. On behalf of everyone here, thank you, and you know, your father is wonderful, and you guys are too. Thank you for being here.